This tutorial shows you how to modify the labels in a Maptitude map. You can change the style of labels for an entire layer, a feature display, a selection set, or even an individual feature. Use the Display Manager to make most changes to labels. If the Display Manager is not visible, choose Map, Display Manager. Click the symbol next to an item to change its label settings. Choose the font, style, and other settings, and click OK. Maptitude updates the labels on the map. Notice that the Ireland label is partially cropped. Labels on areas are automatically placed at the center of an area, so only part of this label is visible at the default location. If you do not want to see a partial label like this, then check this box. When I click Apply, you can see that the partial label is no longer displayed. However, you can also choose the Smart Alignment option. This tells Maptitude to try to fit the area label somewhere in the visible portion of the map. Notice now that Ireland and France are labeled on the map. On the Overlaps tab, you can choose to use an alternate field if there's not enough room for the entire label. In this case, the ISO code will display if there's not enough room for the whole country name. You can see that that is the case for Belgium, where there's only enough room for the alternate field label. You can also choose to prioritize the labels. For example, if I want to make sure that the country label is always displayed, you might want to change the priority to the highest level. Whereas for labels on streets, you likely might want to make it rather low priority. You can choose to make sure that countries with a higher population or larger area get labeled before other countries. And finally, you can choose at what scales labels should be visible by entering values in the largest and smallest drop-down lists. For example, I will set these labels to display as long as the scale is between 1 and 10 million. On the Background tab, you can choose to use shields, if you're labeling highway numbers, for example. Frames, and I'll click Apply here so you can see what those look like. Or you can use shadows or halos. Many of the layers in Maptitude use feature display settings to categorize features. You can change the individual feature settings in the same manner. For example, I can set the labels for capital cities to be larger. And when I click OK, you'll see that Dublin and London labels are updated. You can also customize individual labels with the Custom Label tool. For example, you can move a label, and you can change its style or label by double-clicking on it. You can use this tool to add a callout line. You can hide a label by right-clicking and choosing Suppress Display. And you can use this tool to rotate a label. You can restore any label you've moved or rotated by right-clicking on it and choosing Restore Default Location. You can use any field to label a layer. For example, I'm going to turn on the postcode area layer and hide the highway and city layers just so the map doesn't get too cluttered. I've already attached some of my data to the postcode area layer and want to use my data for the labels. For example, I'm going to choose the Customers field from this drop-down list. When I click OK, you can see the areas are labeled with the number of customers. Let me open the Labels dialog box again, and this time I'm going to label the areas with the sales data, and choose a different format for the values. When I click OK, you can see the areas are now labeled with my sales data. Finally, there is an option to use more than one field in a label. This time I will choose multiple fields from the field drop-down list. Choose some fields that I want to see in the label, such as the postcode area and population. Maptitude gives me the option of using different colors for the fields. I'll display the population in red and click OK. And now when I click Apply, you can see that the areas are now labeled with the two fields. The last thing I'm going to do is make the two lines a little bit closer together by reducing the line height, and click OK. And that wraps up this tutorial on labeling features in Maptitude.